wind-blown dune landscapes looks like. And if you're a science nerd, you call them aeolian dunes. Aeolian just means that they were blown together by wind. There's a lot of these places in Grand Canyon. They range in size from about an acre to over 15 acres. And we have worked on investigating landscape processes in places like this by means of these instrument stations. We collected wind, rainfall, and sand transport data at these instrument stations at 14 different places in the canyon. And I've lost track of how many GCY trips helped out with these, but for 8 years times probably 4 groups a year, yeah, probably 30 to 40 groups of GCY students helped maintain these instrument stations that were collecting really important information about landscape processes above the high water line. So this picture was taken on a really hot day in July, and we can see all of us have jumped in the river before we walked up into work in this dune field, so we're all dripping wet. But the people on the left are downloading data off a weather station onto a laptop, and the people on the right are collecting sand samples from traps to try to find out how much sand is blowing around by the wind. And then GCY students also measured ground cover on a lot of these wind-blown dune fields. We would mark out plots on the ground, and the students would go and identify the different types of plants that were growing in each plot, and also mark down the total percent area covered by plant cover at each place. They also were measuring the amount of biologic crust, cryptogamic crust that grows on the ground, because those are really good indicators of what's happening in that dune field. If dunes are getting new sand supply, they don't have a lot of plant cover, they don't have a lot of biologic crust on the ground. Biologic crust only really gets going when there's not a lot of new sand supply coming in to bury it and prevent it from growing. So let's see, we had 4 groups of GCY students, no, actually 6 groups of GCY students that helped out with this type of work from 2009 to 2011. So from this work, we were able to learn some really new, interesting things that no one had ever learned before about how putting a dam on a river affects landscapes and ecosystems in Grand Canyon. We found out that we basically have 2 different types of dunes now in Grand Canyon. Places on the left that still get new sand supply from controlled floods that happen occasionally in the Colorado River. And then there are other dune fields, like the dune field on the right, that don't get new sand supply because we don't have floods big enough in the post-dam era to bring sand to them. There are a lot of places in Grand Canyon that used to get sand when these really big natural floods used to happen, but that don't get sand anymore because we don't have big enough floods to reach them. And in places on the right, where where we haven't had a flood big enough to reach them, the landscapes start to look very different. They have a lot more of this dark-colored biologic crust growing on the ground, and they often have more plant cover also. And so this was a type of information that we didn't know we were going to find when we started out, but that GCY was really helpful to help us collect. So when I work with GCY, what I want the students to take away from their experience is that everything in our environment is connected. Whether it's in Grand Canyon or anywhere else, whenever humans change something in the environment, what often happens is that whether we meant to or not, we end up changing a lot of other things also. So for instance, when people built a dam upstream of Grand Canyon, people, it was pretty well expected, okay, there's going to be a big lake, Lake Powell, that forms upstream of the dam, and it'll probably change the brown water to clear water, and that'll probably affect the fish downstream. But we're finding now that having dammed the Colorado River has had so many other environmental effects that nobody really anticipated. So it's important to understand how complex our environment is and how many different interconnections there are, so that we can understand if we do change something, we have to know what damage it might cause or how to sort of counteract damage that's already occurred. I absolutely love working with GCY. It's been so much fun for me to participate. I hope it's been half as much fun for the students that have helped with my work as it's been for me to work with them. I often have students ask me, are you getting paid right now? Is this your job? Are you working? I say, yeah, this is my job. I get paid to be here. And students, you can see, or they'll actually tell me that they're considering going into some kind of environmental type job in the future, or earth science or environmental studies as a major in college if they're going on to college. And I think that's so exciting. I get really excited to see students get excited about such a special place, but also it's exciting for me to see students get excited about science. And also, this is think this is especially because a lot of schools don't offer earth science classes in high school. I never had an opportunity to take earth science or geology until I got to college. And in the schools that do offer it, for some reason, a lot of schools will tell the academically stronger students to go take biology and stay away from earth science. And I've never understood why, but it's not uncommon for a school curricula to do this. And I want students to find out and hopefully have a really good experience with GCY on the way, to find out that earth science is fun and it is challenging and useful. And there are really important applications of geology and of earth science, not just in Grand Canyon, of course, but in lots of other places. And I hope that students come away from helping out on GCY trips with the impression that earth science and environmental studies are very important things that they might consider going into because they will have a lot of fun doing it. I just want to thank everyone from GCY who's helped out with this work, and I really look forward to working more with you.
I'm a plant biologist for Grand Canyon National Park, and I work mostly in the backcountry areas of the park. So I work along the river corridor and the side canyons and places that you have to either backpack into or take a long river trip to get to. In thinking about preparing, for this panel discussion and everything, I was thinking about my history with Grand Canyon Youth, and I first started working with GCY in 2005 as a boatman, and I was a boatman on a couple San Juan River trips and on some Diamond Down trips, and really got the opportunity to experience it from that perspective. And then a couple of years later, I had an opportunity to go down as a trip coordinator on a Grand Canyon trip with GCY. And then a few years ago, I came into this position as the biologist at the park, and now I'm on the other end of it, where I'm the one thinking about what GCY is going to do in the field and thinking about what makes sense and what sorts of opportunities are really going to help to facilitate that stewardship and that growth and those really amazing fun experiences that those kids are going to have while they're down on the river. And then this year, I get the opportunity to go back down as a scientist on the youth trip. So it's been a really fun process and a good learning process for me to figure out what really works well with Grand Canyon Youth and with science. So Grand Canyon vegetation staff have been working with GCY for almost 10 years now. And we've really been able to provide these hands-on learning experiences for the kids in the field. And just like Amy was talking about, it's a great opportunity for us to expose the youth to things that they had no idea existed. I mean, I didn't really know that you could be a plant biologist in the national park when I was in high school. And there are all these opportunities that I think we can just really provide to the youth on these sorts of trips. Prior to working with GCY, our program had been working with youth conservation corps or with school groups throughout the summer. And while those were great and amazing experiences, we gained a lot of information and knowledge about how to work with youth in the backcountry or in different environments. Working with Grand Canyon Youth for the last 10 years has been really amazing because of the consistency that it provides our program. There's a great dialogue that happens between those of us within the Park Service and GCY and all of the guides and science coordinators and everyone. And that consistency really makes it that much more powerful, I think, for everyone involved. So really, I mean, thinking about our youth able to do science and is that a natural partnership? For us, it totally has been. It's an ever-evolving process, and there are always challenges associated with it, but it's one of those great opportunities to just sort of learn from those challenges and continue to grow from there. So sort of back to that, where does the value come from? Who who sort of reaps the benefits of youth working on scientific projects down there. And really the answer is that we all reap tremendous benefits from having the youth down there collecting data for us. I'll talk a little bit more in a second about the actual projects that we do, but one of the big things that I think we've learned over the years is that those of us in the science and resource management program, those of us in the vegetation staff, what we really need to do is we need to really plan well for these trips. We need to think about what is the big picture? What do we really want the youth to get out of this trip? How can we make it relevant to them? And how can we make it relevant to their lives after they leave Grand Canyon? So we have this opportunity to show them these amazing plants and talk about invasive plant species and talk about endemic species that are only found in this one location. But how can we instill that curiosity in them and that passion in them to then go back home and think about what's in their backyard as well? And maybe they'll get home and realize that some plant is completely taking over their yard, or be inspired to go volunteer at a nursery, or sort of inspire that curiosity and that growth within them after they leave the canyon as well. So that's really what we try to work on and try to achieve, is to really make it fun and have those lasting impressions with the youth. And then they get exposed to new experiences and new ideas and new cultures and new beliefs. And really we try to just make the statement with them and hopefully help them to understand that they're the future for science and resource management. They're the ones that are going to be making these decisions down the line, and so the more we can sort of foster that and facilitate it, the better off I think we'll be. So just a little bit about the specific projects that our particular vegetation program works on with Grand Canyon youth. We do some native seed collection. This is one of those that I think we did a little bit more at the beginning. We thought, oh great, we can send youth out to go collect seed, and then we have a great beautiful nursery up on the South Rim that we can grow out plants. But that's one of those that we realized after a little bit of time that maybe that wasn't the best use of time for the kids or for our project. It's really hard to collect seed when you don't have a trained biologist with you telling you what the plants are. So that was one of those things that we're still doing it a little bit, but we started out strong thinking it was a great idea, and then realized maybe there are better things that we can do with everyone. Photo monitoring is something that is a really amazing, awesome thing that we can engage the GCY kids in. We have photos, photo documentation of different places throughout Grand Canyon, whether it's documenting invasive plant species or rare endemic species, or a restoration area, some place that we've actively planted or spread seed. And they're areas that we'd love to get photos of so that we can put them in reports or use them in presentations. But I'm not down there all the time, and sometimes I can't take the time to hike 4 miles up Stone Creek to go get a photo of one of our restoration sites up there. So using Grand Canyon youth to go up there and take those photos is really, it's a really great asset for us. Invasive plant removal is probably one of the biggest things that we do with Grand Canyon youth trips. On one of Emma's slides, she had on there an Adopt a Camp program, and that's something that we started a couple of years ago, and GCY has been instrumental in that. So basically, we chose a couple different invasive plant species and about 10 different camps or so. And the idea is to try to remove those invasive plant species from the camps. And in doing that, we weren't totally sure if our methods were right. We're still not totally sure if some of the things that we're doing actually work. But just by having GCY trips stop at camps consistently throughout the summer, we've actually gotten some really great data. And I just got a report back from a trip that came off the river that at Cardenas Camp, where GCY trips stopped, I think about 5 times last year and pulled camelthorn. They said that there was hardly any there this year, which is really great news because we didn't know if we wanted to continually pull them. So, yay, science! That was great. That's super exciting for us. And it wouldn't be done if it weren't for those GCY trips. Also, like I mentioned, we have restoration sites down there. Those of you that are familiar, we have the Soap Creek Restoration Site where we've done a huge planting in this, what was once kind of a big barren area, and GCY trips stop and they'll water and they'll get a chance to like see this active restoration that is occurring in a landscape that's really difficult and challenging to restore. Also, they collect data for us, and that's a hard job for any of you that have ever collected data before. You know, it's challenging to write neatly and to actually count the numbers and to fill in all the fields. And GCY kids do a great job at collecting data for us, and they're usually really into it and pretty excited about it. And then the last thing, sort of like the newest thing that we've really been doing with GCY is tamarisk beetle sampling. A couple of years ago, the tamarisk beetle unsuspectingly, I guess, moved down into Grand Canyon. It wasn't supposed to be here, but it's here now. And so we've really been able to tap into GCY and use those trips going down the river to engage those kids in this great, amazing monitoring project. And so we go down there with our big nets and sweep for beetles, and we've been able to map the movement of the beetle down through the canyon in part because of the GCY trips. And that's another great opportunity to really engage the youth in this like pretty hot topic, and it's very controversial. I mean, you're releasing a non-native species to control a non-native species, and it's one of those opportunities to just dive into these great intellectual conversations with these kids, and it's really super fun. And you know, in addition to running around sweeping for beetles, they also have these really stimulating conversations. So really, without our partnership with GCY, the vegetation program, for sure, at Grand Canyon National Park would not get half as much done as we do. So we are super grateful for that partnership and look forward to continuing it.